Welcome to the show. I am James Swanwick. Today we're talking to a gentleman by the name of Daryl McCarthy, who is a 57-year-old residential mortgage lender from Wilmington, North Carolina, right on the east coast of the US there, about 3 hours north of Charleston, South Carolina. And we're celebrating his 90 days being alcohol-free. In fact, he's more than 90 days now, but he went through our Project 90 process. He's been married to wife Karen for 28 years. They've been together for 30 years. He's a father of two, a 23-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter. And Daryl's going to tell us about what life was like before he chose to go alcohol-free, including just how many ab crunches he gets through in a day now. Daryl, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us.
Hi, James. Thanks again for asking me to do this with you today.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Daryl.
Well, you rattled off the important things. Let's see what else. I could maybe just jump right into how life was before Project 90. And I thought life was pretty good then. Looking back on it, might have been fooling myself, but I seem to, I drank socially. What does that mean? I drank almost every night, but I never really got drunk. Now there were times I did, on a weekend if there was an event, or certainly with some of my buddies when I was playing golf. It would happen from time to time. For the most part, I tried to handle myself well, but I drank often, and I drank a decent amount. And it started to accelerate over the last 5 years or so. So much so that my wife, Karen, you mentioned, started asking questions and, hey, what's going on? Hey, I'm not pleased, that sort of thing. And then even more so, it accelerated over the last couple of years. I just found myself drinking often like I was, but drinking more. And there were times where I was getting drunk. And so it became a problem. But even up to when I decided to join you and Project 90, I still felt as though I was managing things pretty well. Work was fine. Relationships I thought were okay, other than my wife being upset. I had friendships. Everything seemed to be okay. But like I said, looking back, I realize, it wasn't that great.
What were you drinking? What was your drink of choice? And just give us an idea of how much you were drinking almost every night.
Mainly beer. I would have 2 or 3 beers almost every night, maybe 4. Sometimes I'd follow that up with a glass of wine or 2. Rarely did I have liquor, but occasionally I would. When we went out, I would maybe have liquor, bourbon, sometimes some Tito's vodka. But for the most part, it was beer and wine. And then I would drink more, though, when I was playing golf. That's one of my hobbies. I have friends who I think they've seen what I've done, and they know that they think that they are managing things well, and probably deep down inside they're not quite. But I was drinking too often, too much. Yeah.
And when you said that this accelerated over the course of about 5 years, can you give any reason as to why it accelerated? Have you identified what that reason or what those reasons were?
I have, in large part, really to what I learned through Project 90. And I guess I'll start by prefacing this way. What I read, and I think I mentioned it to you on the phone, James, that PDF guide.
The Alcohol Freedom Formula. It's a guide that I've written. It's about 70 odd pages, and I send it out to people as a free resource. It's called the Alcohol Freedom Formula. If you're listening and you haven't got it, you can, I think there's a link in the show notes, but you can also go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/guide, and it gives a pretty comprehensive overview of how one could stop drinking.
Right. So in looking back, it just became habitual. It really was nothing more than that. And again, I know that now, having gone through the 100+ days, it was just habitual, and it got progressively worse, progressively more habitual. And so how easily it was to switch gears, starting with what I read in that guide and then through Project 90, now I have good habits. I've formed good habits as it relates to alcohol. So that's my answer. It just became more habitual.
And I'm imagining if you're having 3 or 4 beers a night and a glass of wine, or just 3 or 4 beers and sometimes the additional glass of wine, and then on occasion when you're out and about, you're having a bourbon or a vodka, I'm imagining that must have had some consequences. And so did you identify during those 5 years where your drinking increased what those consequences were, besides Karen's, I guess, disapproval, which I'll ask you about in a second, but besides that, what were the consequences you identified?
So that is obviously the number one, what you mentioned, my wife, her disapproval. What I identified was, and a lot of this is after the fact, after having gone through the 90 days, 100 days. Now, during that time, prior to the 90 days, what I identified was I had gotten sloppy. I had put on weight. I was 25 pounds overweight. I looked okay in my eyes, but I knew I had put on pounds. And there were times when I was foolish and fooled myself, thought it was okay to drive home from an event after having a few drinks, and that's never okay. But I got in the habit of doing that from time to time, and that was risky and not very smart. And so I feel very fortunate to have made it unscathed from my past behavior to where I am now. So I would say those risky behaviors and then putting on weight were the two things that I identified prior to P90.
Yeah, I think in the US, the drink driving limit is 0.08. In Australia, it's actually 0.05. I remember when I moved to the US in the early 2000s, and I learned that the drink driving limit was 0.08. And I was thinking, wow, that means I could drink almost twice the amount, or at least I can have as I could growing up in Australia. And I thought, happy days. And there were a couple times where, I would drive myself to the Jones Bar on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood with some friends and be absolutely confident that I wasn't going to breach that limit. And I'll never know whether I did breach the limit, but I tell you what, by the fact that when I was driving home at about 11:30 or midnight some nights, and I would stop off at Carl's Jr. Burger on the corner of I think it was La Brea and Santa Monica Boulevard to get a burger, made me realize that I really wasn't in a great state, and certainly not in a good enough state to be driving. So that's a pretty frightening feeling, isn't it? When you realize after the fact that even if you were to blow into a breathalyzer, you were 0.07, you still know that your motor skills are compromised.
Yeah, for sure. And I like to, I pride myself on being responsible, being in good form, being a positive influence on others, holding myself to a higher standard. And I wasn't doing that.
Yeah. And when you said you'd put on about 25 pounds of unwanted weight, let's call it, where did that show up? Does that mean that maybe you weren't fitting into your pants or your shirts, or you just had a puffy face, or you had some wrinkles, you weren't sleeping well, or you were a bit more tired? What?
My pants. I went, when I'm fit, and I'm fit now, thanks to my commitment to your program and the things that I added to that. But I went from 32s to tight 34s, and now I'm back into 32s, and they actually are starting to get a little loose, but I don't foresee me losing any more weight. But yeah, so it's certainly in my pants. And I'll tell you, the word I used at the beginning of P90 and in speaking to others, or to how I was then, I like to use the word sloppy. I had become sloppy physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it. And like I was saying earlier, I like to be sharp in all those areas. And I had just gotten sloppy, didn't realize it, thought I was doing okay. But looking back, that's what I was. I was sloppy.
You mentioned that your wife, Karen, your wife of 28 years, started to notice things and say things. What were the things that she was noticing and saying?
Well, the things that I already mentioned, she realized that I was drinking too much. She realized that I had gotten drunk too many times. She realized that I had driven home. So it was frightening for her. And it went on for, a couple of years, and it took its toll. And then one day, right before I committed to P90, and this is how I did. I think I touched on it when you were kind enough to call me to congratulate me after 90 days. I touched on it with you then, but what happened was we have a small little beach house, and we were on the pier, and we were having a draft beer together. Middle of the day was February 20th, I think, and I joined P90 February 23rd. But February 20th, we were out there and having a draft beer, and she was not in a good mood. And I said, what's going on? And she basically, I can't remember her exact words, but expressed her displeasure with my behavior, drinking behavior and habits. And I said, oh man, I guess that's where we are. I can't even have a draft beer together. And right then and there, I poured the beer out, cup of draft beer out over the pier. I said, okay. And we walked home without talking to each other. And I walked in and immediately Googled. I Googled motivational speeches to stop drinking. And I've never tried to stop before. I've taken a break, a week, never a month, but a week, I think a week most, but it's always with the intention of going back to drinking, just taking a break. But I knew I needed to change. So I Googled that, and I don't remember which link it was, but you popped up, and that guide popped up, and I read that guide. And it immediately resonated with me. I felt like you were talking to me. It said, I think it started off, "You are not an alcoholic." I always thought I was. I thought I was just a heavy drinker, and that's just how it was going to always be. But you also said you are a high achiever, and I felt like I was relatively, and that you just have bad habits, and we need to turn those into good habits. And I read through your whole guide, and it truly resonated, so much so that I already knew what I needed to do. You taught me enough just with that guide what I needed to do. I almost came close to not committing to P90, and I did anyway, just really for an insurance policy to make sure I made good on my commitment to change, and to see what I would learn through it. But I had already committed to changing my habits just by reading the guide.
Amazing. And there must have been something in what Karen said, like there must have been something that got through to you in that moment when you were on the pier. Did you say it was the pier or the jetty? What was the
pier?
On the pier, okay. There must have been something that she said, or something that you saw in her face, or something that you recognized in yourself that inspired you to pour that drink out, and on that, somewhat silent walk home, make that choice. Was it something that had been building up over a couple of years, a couple of weeks? Was it the look in her eyes? Was it like what was the trigger that got you to actually get into movement on this?
Well, and I know Project 90 is not a religious-based program, but I am a man of faith. I believe in God. And in my prayer time leading up for the last couple of years, I knew I was drinking too much, like I said, and I would pray, hey, help me get this under control. So I look at it as a little bit of divine intervention. And for whatever reason, that particular moment in time is when I decided to do something about it. And I think looking back, committing at that point, I feel like, and part of my prayers, by the way, were always, hey, remove some of this temptation of alcohol, and it's a habit. And I was tempted. I would, go to the bar, what have you. But part of my prayer was, hey, remove this temptation. Just make it a little easier for me. And at that commitment, in that moment in time, and then throughout the 90 days and beyond, I haven't had any temptation. So it's been really easy. And I don't, hey, is it me? Maybe a little bit, but I think I'm getting some help.
Beautiful. And what feedback has Karen given you now that I think you're 100 days plus alcohol free as we're recording this? So what feedback have you got from Karen and maybe from others?
Oh gosh, I'm a completely different person. I think I told you I hold myself to a pretty high standard, and I like to inspire others and encourage others. And now, even through Project 90, and certainly having gone past that, I am an inspiration. People have told me to try to curb their alcohol habits. You mentioned my buddy Chris Britt, who joined. He was inspired so much that he joined. I was about 70 days in, and I worked with him, and he saw my transformation in process, and so much so that he joined. But others, my buddies, they see how easy it was for me, and what a difference it made to me physically, and just my conversations. A lot of what you say in your podcasts and your daily videos. I had a morning routine, which I'm happy to tell you what that was if you're interested. But
sure.
Is exactly what happened. It was fun. It was easy. And I lost weight. My skin got better. My communication skills got sharper. All of those things are just fantastic. So, yeah.
When you say communication skills were sharper and conversations got better, would you just elaborate on that? Maybe, in the workplace, like what was it that was heightened or optimized as a result of you being alcohol-free during this process?
Well, I consider myself a very caring person. I care about others. But being alcohol-free has elevated that. So now I really am intentional with every conversation, every interaction with anybody and everybody. I'm interested. I'm listening. I'm empathetic. So it's like I said, I cared before, but now I really care, and it's created those deeper connections, deeper interactions, even with a random person on the street or a teller at the supermarket. Everybody, I'm zeroed in.
Yeah, and you said that you lead a team of 20 mortgage loan officers at your residential mortgage lending business. So
yes,
how did you?
It's a bank, but it's not my business, but it's a bank. Yes.
Got it. At a bank. And so how did those 20 mortgage loan officers respond to you during the 90 days of being alcohol free? How did you notice them responding to you, I guess?
Well, I'll start by saying one of the guys, when I announced it day one, because there were times where we'd leave and maybe go have a beer at lunch. That was not uncommon. But when I announced my decision, what I was going to do, one of the guys said, "Hey, Daryl, you've got my support." And my immediate response was, "Hey, Chris," a different Chris. So, "Hey, Chris, I appreciate that, but no offense, I don't need your support. I'm doing this. It's just how I am. I was committed. I'm doing it," in which I did do it. But after starting it, and then some are here, some are elsewhere, but I've interacted with all of them. They are inspired, and some like Chris has joined P90. There are others who have already started their own personal cleanse, not drinking. One's doing 30 days on her own. One is doing his own modification, all because of what they've seen in me and what I've shared. I don't preach to anybody, but I share what's worked for me and what's working for me. And so I think it's helped.
James here, pardon the interruption. I just wanted to share some of the results that many of our Project 90 clients have been generating in their life because of not drinking alcohol for at least 90 days. Indipal Johal from California says, "I'm having more fun alcohol-free." Victoria from Colorado says, "I'm feeling so much happier and positive." Craig from Washington says, "I feel more freedom." And John from New York says, "I'm feeling so much happier." If you'd like to get your self-confidence back, if you'd like to have more joy joy, more peace, more happiness in your life, and you are ready and willing to get outside professional support to get off the stop-start cycle with your drinking, join a like-minded community, and finally nip this drinking issue in the bud, then I invite you to go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project90, read through, watch through all the details, and if it feels in alignment, then you can schedule a 15-minute exploratory call with one of our coaches. You can go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project90, and the link is in the show notes. Let's get back to the episode. When you said that you announced on day one you were doing this, a big fear of many folks is people knowing that they drink more than they know they should and that they're going to take a break. So a lot of people withhold, they hide, they don't want people to know that there's any reason to stop drinking in the first place, because that might indicate that they've got a quote unquote drinking problem. But you seemed to revel in just announcing, hey guys, this is what I'm doing. So what was the thought process? Was there any feeling of awkwardness about announcing this, or did you feel confident about announcing this right from the get-go?
Yeah, it wasn't a problem at all. I like to feel like I'm an authentic person, good and bad. I know my weaknesses. I know my strengths, even more so now. But no, I had no problem. And like I said earlier, I tried to make sure when I was drinking with my friends or colleagues or anybody really, I tried to make sure I didn't drink too much where I made a fool of myself or said anything embarrassing. I kind of managed it. And, whenever I felt like I was getting to that point, I stopped and kind of went to bed or passed out, or whatever you want to call it. I never was stumbling around or being obnoxious. I kind of controlled myself well. So some people might not have thought that I drank too much or have known. I think most people knew I was a drinker for sure. So having said that, I think when I announced it, maybe people were like, wow, I didn't know you had a problem or drank so much. What I told people was, hey, I drank too much, drank too often. I want to change. And I was very confident in that. That's what I was doing. So I was just being truthful and transparent. It was not a problem.
A lot of folks who work inside corporate America, inside of an organization, also have a concern, at least that's what they've shared with me, that a superior, a boss or management, if or when they would discover that an employee has quote unquote a drinking problem, that might compromise their positioning inside of the company, etc. And this is a fear that they have. You didn't seem to have that fear. You seemed to just go, you know what, I'm just going to put it out there. Why didn't you consider that, as many people have shared with me that they consider that before they announce?
Yeah, I would understand that. And I can't speak for anyone else in the situation that they're in and the company they might work for and the environment. But I didn't feel like I had anything to risk by just being open about it. I had everything to gain, really.
What's interesting is that, at least in my experience of having coached folks now since 2015, is that the managers or the superior or the higher up people in management often drinking as much or more as the person who's worried about sharing what their drinking habits are. And so it just seems to be this culture. I mean, you referenced sometimes you would go out and have a beer at lunchtime. I mean, I can recall all the way back in 1999, I just moved to London, England, and I had a job as a sub-editor on a now defunct tabloid newspaper called The News of the World. It was a Rupert Murdoch-owned tabloid paper, and every Saturday I would go in there and start at about, I think, 3:00 and go through until 10. And my job was to just, edit some of the soccer stories that would come in on Saturday. So I would, cut it down and fix grammar and spelling, etc. But at about 6:00, everyone would file out of this office and walk across the road in East London here. I think it was in the suburb of, what was it? I think it was called Southwark, or around Canary Wharf area, and file into this pub. And these Brits would absolutely smash 2 or 3 pints of beer, big pints of beer.
Sounds fun.
And I would do it because I was, it was shocking to me, but I was like, okay, I'm in England. I've just arrived. I'll, when in Rome, I'll do the culture. Sure. And I would drink sometimes one beer, sometimes two. And by the time I would get back to the office around 7:15, 7:30 for the final 3 hours of the shift, I was absolutely blind. I mean, I'm realizing I'm probably like identifying what a lightweight I was, but 3 beers, 2 or 3 pints of beer in quick succession. And then you're sitting down at a computer expected to like be absolutely sharp and focused. It's ridiculous, but yet that was the culture. And at the time, I could see that that had probably been the culture for decades, like journalists drinking beer at the pub, coming back, having a bit of a joke. It was astounding to me, and I couldn't believe they kept me in that job for as long as they did, because I'm sure I was performing at a subpar level. So anyway, I think
about a 5 out of 10, right?
Oh, horrendous. I don't know what the culture is now. I hope. Well, actually, that newspaper is now closed. It closed under much controversy some years ago, but I'm not sure what the tabloid or the newspaper culture is now. I would think that with the benefit of 24 years, they'd probably frown on that kind of behavior now. But that was the norm.
I think it comes down to, I can't speak for any culture. I'm just maybe generalizing here. I think it comes down to the job performance and the production. If the numbers are working and things are good, it's probably tolerated. If it's not, it might be frowned upon. It could be a problem.
Yeah. So, Daryl, for our listener who may be a little unsure about this, and by this I mean having a better relationship with alcohol, it may mean for some people they reduce, all right, or they try moderation. Now, in my experience, moderation for most people is pretty ineffective and that can keep you stuck. But I would much rather folks try moderation than just continue on with the same level of drinking. So for people who are, thinking about this, have been pondering this for a while, how could you reassure them that at the very least reducing might be beneficial for them?
Well, I'll start by saying this, and this is to be transparent as well. I don't know if you recall when you called me to congratulate me on my 90 days, I was telling you what I was thinking. I said my anniversary was coming up. I was thinking about having a glass of wine with Karen, and I was or a beer even, and I was trying to describe to you then what my thinking was and why I was open to doing it, even though I didn't want it. I didn't have, like I told you, I didn't have any temptation at all during the 90 days. Or I might have had a couple small ones, but not really nothing. So it was very easy. But after that, I went into this thing committing to 90 days, and I had an open mind. After 90 days, if I don't know what I'm going to feel like, but I'm just going to go in it and commit to it and go all in. And then after 90 days, we'll see what happens. So after 90 days, I didn't have any temptation. I didn't have any desire for alcohol. But part of me wanted to know how was I changed other than what I just said? Like, did my body, do I truly not want alcohol? And in talking with you when you called me, what was bothering me as I was, for the 2 weeks leading up to the end of the 90 days, I was kind of going back and forth. It's like, what am I going to do after 90 days? But I really needed to know myself what effect does alcohol have on me now? Does it have a hold on me? Obviously, I've learned that it didn't. I always refer back to one of your podcasts with that Dr. John Gray, who wrote the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. His definition of an alcoholic was, you can't quit for 30 days, you probably have a problem. Well, I easily quit for 90 days. So I felt like I was not an alcoholic. I just had bad habits. But I still wanted to know after the 90 days, what is my relationship with alcohol? What does it do to me? So I actually, just last Thursday, I played golf and I intentionally finished and I ordered a beer. And I knew one of three things was going to happen. And I only did it just to see. I didn't want to have the pressure of okay, I'm alcohol free. I didn't want to have that. This is day number 120. I just I needed to get that behind me. And I knew I was changed. I knew what I wanted my life to be. I'm confident in that it's completely changed. So I wasn't risking anything in my mind. But I ordered a beer and a water. And I sipped that beer. And I'll tell you, it didn't taste that great, and it did not trigger me at all. And I didn't want it. I talk about take it or leave it. I really more wanted to leave it. Now I drank most of it because I was sitting with some guys and I drank my water. But inside I was thinking, I don't, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted to feel like. I didn't want it to be a trigger, and it was far from that. It wasn't, I hate it. It wasn't that, but it was like, I mean, I'd rather have a non-alcoholic beer or water. And so I was very happy to have gone through that for myself, kind of prove that to myself, that my habits have changed. Alcohol means nothing in my life. So, will I have another beer again? I don't know, but I certainly don't want one. And now at least I know that I really, truly don't want one. And life is way better. So if I ever were to have another one, I know it's going to be on guard, and I'm not going to be going down a road, going back the other way. It just means nothing.
Thank you for sharing that. Have you been back to the pier with Karen yet?
We are going this weekend. And the answer is no, but might I have, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not even worried about it. And even if I did, it would just be me having a beer with Karen, but I probably won't, but I'm not worried about it. Because I know after that test, I'm exactly where I want to be after my commitment and what I learned through Project 90. In fact, real quick, that was the other thing that sold me on your guide, is you didn't say Project 90 would help me, I'll speak for myself, help me stop drinking forever. You said you might, but also you said to change your drinking habits. I don't know what your exact words in the guide, but I think it's roughly that effect. And so the Project 90 made good on that as far as I'm concerned. It did everything I hoped it would for me. And so that's all I can say about that.
So you were doing 300 ab crunches at one point, and now you're doing 600. So let's finish by you telling us the story of this. What's going on? I'm not going to ask you to lift up your shirt and show us your abs, but what was the progression of these ab crunches?
Well, like I said earlier, I had gotten sloppy, put on those 25 pounds, and when I made the commitment to Project 90 for 90 days, I knew it was a perfect time. Knowing I was going to be alcohol free for 90 days. Now's the time to do everything else and let's get in shape. And so I changed my diet. I'd gotten sloppy I was eating anything and everything. And so I basically ate fruits, vegetables, and protein every day, every night for 90 days. Salads every night. I had 3 cups of black coffee in the morning. The rest of the day was just water, between 1 gallon and 2 gallons of water. Every day. My morning routine was I'd wake up, I'd go to bed at 9, I'd wake up at 5. I'd start off with your daily not a podcast, but your daily video.
Daily video, pre-recorded training video for P90 clients. Yeah,
exactly. That was part of my morning routine for 90 days. Solid. I'd listen to that video. I did a daily 10. I didn't do daily 20, but I did a daily 10 and still do it. So I did the daily 10.
And what Daryl, I'll just interrupt there. What Daryl's referring to is we have our clients write down 20 things that they're grateful for every morning, because it activates the reticular activating system, which is a bundle of nerves in your brain, which when you do 20, or in Daryl's case, 10, what it does is that it has your mind easily find evidence of things to be grateful for, which reduces your stress and anxiety, which reduces your cravings for alcohol, which has been shown by numerous studies to increase positive mindset and wellness and peace and calm.
Yeah, and it's been a great exercise, and I don't see myself stopping it. It's part diary and part thankfulness. Well, it's all thankfulness, but part diary, because it's should reflect on the events of the previous day or looking forward. So I would do the daily video. I would do the daily 10, and this is 5 in the morning. I've got my black coffee. I do a little bit of work just to kind of get a head start. Then I do my prayer time. And then I'd shuffle down the hall to where the weights are. It's just dumbbells. And I just did some dumbbell work, and I did my crunches. And it started off at 300, and now it's up to 600. And I've done this every day for 90 plus days. And so I've lost those 25 pounds. I feel fantastic physically, mentally and spiritually sharp. So I knew I could commit to 90 days alcohol free. And then with that, I knew I could commit to 90 days of all in with my diet and my exercise. And so here I am.
Incredible. Well, you look terrific. Great
Thank
work on 600 crunches. Amazing work on, committing to those 90 days alcohol free. I'm sure it sounds like Karen is pleased and happy. Sounds like you're inspiring lots of people. I heard the word inspiring there at least a few times, not just inspiring your golf buddies, but inspiring your colleagues, it sounds like as well. And I always say this, when people go through this process, just by you getting the benefits, and without you even singing the praises of the benefits, people see it in you because you embody that change. And that inspires them to take some kind of positive action. And it may not candidly be stopping drinking. It might be eating better. It might be sleeping better. It might be being in gratitude more. It might be being a better communicator, but it has this ripple effect. So I want to really acknowledge you, Daryl, because your commitment to this change is going to have that ripple effect of inspiring dozens, hundreds, and probably thousands of people over time because of the change that you've created in yourself. So I tip my hat to you, sir.
Well, thank you, James. I really appreciate that. And that's how I feel. I am thankful for the change and the transformation, and I'm thankful to you and P90. I couldn't have done it without you guys, I don't think. Well, I don't know. We'll never know. But I do know that I am changed because of it. And part of my goal each day, like I said, is to positively interact with others and encourage others, and try to inspire others by my words and my actions. So if that happens, then I couldn't be happier.
Daryl McCarthy, 57, from Wilmington, North Carolina. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you.
Thank you, James.
And for you, the listener, thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one. Hi there, this is James Swanwick. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you would leave a review. That will help us climb the rankings and get our show exposed to so many more people who could really benefit from the content. You can do that by going into Apple Podcasts, rating the show, writing a little one-sentence summary, and posting it. That would be so amazing. Thank you. Likewise, if you would like to schedule a 15-minute exploratory call and apply for our Project 90 program, then you can do so by going to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project90. If you'd like to get the free guide, that is the Alcohol Freedom Formula Guide, you can go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/guide. Our YouTube channel is at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at James Swanwick. Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you, and we'll catch you on the next one.